Let's dive into 7 key differences between communication styles in the United States and Brazil. Knowing what they are and how to navigate them could help you in your personal and professional lives. A quick AI response about differences in negotiation styles between the US and Brazil can be summarized as follows. In the US, negotiations are driven by facts, data, and a competitive approach towards a mutually beneficial outcome. In Brazil, building trust and rapport can have a greater influence on success of negotiations. My reaction to this summary is that it's not wrong. It's also not particularly helpful without examples. Competition, data, facts, and context matter everywhere. When was the last time you saw someone try to negotiate the price of a Coca-Cola at a Pão de Açúcar or at a Walmart? The less frequent a purchase, the higher its value and the more difficult it is to find a substitute, the more likely negotiations will be involved and more important. Negotiation styles is much more important in large cases. I'll share 2 illustrative anecdotes. Let's start with my friend Daniela, who visited Boston from Sao Paulo. She purchased a $200 pair of shoes on Newbury Street, which is the equivalent of Sao Paulo's Oscar Freire. The next day, Danny had total buyer's remorse and decided to return the shoes. She was in a panic. She spent the rest of the day sharing her various negotiation strategies with me on how she was going to try to return them. I thought she was totally crazy because they would almost certainly take the shoes back without any questions. Competition-driven store policy would have just dictated the outcome, not a carefully crafted story with an Oscar-level delivery. A second friend and a prominent Brazilian lawyer helped me to understand how systematic differences between Brazil and the US can impact negotiation strategies. I asked Ana Paula, who is from Sao Paulo and has worked in New York, what was different and most challenging about her job in New York versus Brazil. She told me that adjusting to the different speeds of the legal proceedings in the countries was the most difficult part. Most of her cases in Brazil took over 5 years to resolve, with many taking decades to finish. In contrast, she said that her caseload in the US had entirely changed in less than 6 years. While I'm not sure if the slower speeds in the Brazilian court system is the cause, the effect, or is unrelated to the tendency of Brazilians to rely on personal relationships and trust in negotiations, Ana Paula's observations got me thinking that it might have some small role. Most people's initial reaction to criticism, no matter how well intended it is to get defensive. That's true in Brazil, it's true in the US, it's definitely true for me. The way we communicate criticism and how we ultimately respond to it, however, I've found to be substantially different across the countries. In the US, constructive criticism is given more directly and is more accepted than it is in Brazil. An experience I had giving feedback to a close Brazilian friend more than 10 years ago has stayed with me. She asked me to review an application letter and her resume. Knowing that the opportunity she was applying for was both competitive and very important to her, I carefully read through her draft. The draft needed major edits. I spent a few hours tightening phrases, strengthening verbs, and most importantly, suggesting some structural changes that could make the text shorter and the flow more logical. The result was a digital Red Sea of crossouts and comments. When done, I wrote her a brief email wishing her good luck, saying that I hoped the detailed comments in the attached document would be helpful, and I offered to explain anything that wasn't clear and to provide any additional help that might be useful. What happened next? 2 days later, I get a brief thank you. No statements of agreement or disagreement, no follow-up questions. Even though we'd long since established a close, trusting relationship, my feedback was requested and 100% intended to be helpful. In the short term, this experience was painful to us both. I lost time, and my guess is that she lost self-confidence and quietly lost her temper with me. In the longer term, the experience really helped me understand how differently people can respond to constructive criticism. It drove home the size of the cultural divide between Brazil and the US about feedback that is often concealed by Brazilians' tendency to avoid conflict and Americans, more precisely North American people from the United States, assumption that everybody else is like us. Before giving my friend the feedback, I had known that prescriptive advice in Brazil is normally preceded by niceties and reassurances. I knew that real constructive criticism is most safely served in a sugar coating if it's going to have a chance of being swallowed and digested. I mistakenly thought that the trust that was built up between friends would automatically make that step unnecessary. I was wrong. When you're wrong, just adjust your strategy and keep going.